Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I know it's been a while, but today I have someone really special with me. So, as many of you know, I started to do full-time content creation back in May, and then today I just wanted to have a discussion about UGC. And I have a guest who has had several businesses and is familiar with like entrepreneurship and also just with different types of content creation and how that relates to business. And so, yeah, today I have my boyfriend Max with me. And Max has, he's working on another brand right now, but previously he had a seven-figure exit at 21. Is that right?
Correct.
Yes. And yeah, well, I just wanted to have a discussion about UGC, which is user generated content. And we're going to be just diving in and talking about a lot of hot topics right now, like usage rights, put in your rates in your portfolio, and different things that UGC creators should be focusing on. So, yeah, let's dive in. So, yeah, hi, Max.
Hello.
Thanks for being here today. How's your day going?
Good. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, but so I guess my first question, just it's just a bit general, but right now I have a list of topics where there's a lot of controversy in UGC. But first, I wanted to start general just to set the stage a bit. And so, for those of you watching who don't know what UGC is, it stands for user generated content. And this is basically any content that doesn't live on the creator or influencer's page. And mostly brands will use it for their ads or their social media content. And sometimes they'll mix it up. So, yeah. And so, my first question for you, Max, is why do you think UGC has had a large boom and why are businesses interested in UGC?
Yeah, so user generated content looks very native to the platform. So let's say a brand wants to advertise on Instagram or Facebook. You need some way to capture somebody's attention, and what tends to capture people's attention is authentic content. So user generated content is just it could be anybody, mostly usually it's not like a celebrity, it could just be like anybody talking about their experience with the product, and then people who resonate with either that person or the message tends to buy the product. So the reason why we use user generated content within our brand is because it leads to higher conversion rates, which is mostly a function of how much you make, right? So like
Mm-hmm.
let's say I put in $1 into the platform, and then I make $2 back. That's pretty good. But let's say I can make $3 or $4 back. That's even better. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why we keep testing out these different formats for user generated content to try to improve that efficiency.
Yeah, thank you. And I know, so we're working on a new brand together right now, but you obviously already had a past business that you sold. Did you use UGC at all in that business? Like maybe, other moms and, kids that were using. So it was a science product for kids. So I'm just curious.
Yeah, so we contacted a lot of people from YouTube who had small channels so that we could create content, and also our top performing ad had just regular people using the product, including you, right? So, um, and that performs well, right? Because sometimes if it looks scripted, people just get turned off by that ad, so you want it to look very natural, and that's why I think user generated content has really exploded over the past couple of years as brands have realized that really the main purpose of advertising on these platforms is to make sales, at least in the beginning for a brand, right? So let's say you're making nine figures, 10 figures a year, maybe your objectives are different, but if you're a bootstrapped brand, it's very important to make sales from the content. So then people are starting to analyze the data and figuring out that this works well.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, you brought up a good point with just how if you're nine or ten figures, you might be using like different types of content because, UGC is just one form of that, right? But there's lots of different ways to advertise
Yeah.
and different types of content. And I guess we'll get into more of that later, like direct response marketing, things like that. But yeah, so these are some of the questions. I have some listed that kind of have a lot of controversy right now in the UGC space. So just diving right in. From a brand's perspective, how do you feel about UGC creators listing their rates in their portfolio? Like, as a business owner, do you like seeing that? Like, do you like transparency, or would you rather have like, contact me for more or something like that?
Yeah, so I think in the beginning, it's always important to have the transparency just because it makes it easier for bootstrap brands to figure out if the rates work well.
Mm-hmm.
right? So like, um, but I could see the argument for having a call so that you can talk about the rates and also have that whole entire sales process.
Mm-hmm.
So on our side, when we contact content creators, we usually pitch a specific like price, and then
Mm-hmm.
we go from there. So it is flexible. I would say in the beginning, try to focus. The price in the beginning is not really a big problem.
Mm-hmm.
I would say I would think that like your portfolio is very important, right?
Mm-hmm.
Having all that
Mm-hmm.
content there.
Right.
That way you can sell the person, usually the brand owner, on
Mm-hmm.
a particular package.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I know a lot of creators are starting to hop on calls with brands, but I think a lot of people are kind of scared to do that initially. But I think that's definitely a good, good practice. And even if you don't get the price you want, like a lot of people, like even I in the beginning, like took a lot of gifted deals just because, you have to kind of show your value to the brand
Yeah, and in the
first.
beginning too, hopping on these calls is really important, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a form of customer discovery, right, where you talk about
Mm-hmm.
the problems they might have, and then you take notes on those problems, and then you can figure out how you can solve them in the future. And
Mm-hmm.
some problems that bootstrapped brand owners usually have is performance marketing related. They
Mm-hmm.
want content that like converts, and
Mm-hmm.
usually in terms of the price is not necessarily the issue in the beginning. It's more so the time, and also if your content is actually going to convert, right? So
Right.
let's say I end up paying $10,000 for a video. Is that
Mm-hmm.
expensive? Well, you don't really know, because how about if I make $1 million off that video?
Mm-hmm.
Then that's not expensive. But let's say I only make $10 off that video, then I got scammed, right? So it really depends on how well you can show that that you can drive performance, and
Mm-hmm.
also adding those guarantees in place, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if you can say something like, um, you won't have to pay us until you make your first sale from this ad, then that could be a strong
Mm-hmm.
guarantee. Or maybe you can just take a percentage of ad spend, right? So as a brand owner, I want to be able to get lots of videos and see which one performs. So
Mm-hmm.
really taking an agency model with user generated content is probably the way to go in the future.
Right. And yeah, I want to get into that topic a little more because honestly, I think a lot of UGC creators nowadays, they kind of, a lot of people just make content, but now it's more so you want to have more high leverage skills, like being able to convert for brands. And that's a whole part where I like really try to tell people that I'm helping that to really try to get into ads because I want to say maybe 90% of UGC creators right now still just make like either social media content or content but they don't really know what's like going to end up happening with it. So ads, could you just explain like ads a little bit more versus organic content and why it's like a good idea to be able to learn how to do that?
Yeah, so organic content, it's hard to attribute sales, if that makes sense. So of
Mhm.
course, like there are ways to track it, but let's say you make 1 million views. Sometimes it's hard for the brand owner to know if that made sales because like of the tracking. But for ads, it's very easy. Like I can say, this ad got this much spend and it made this much money. So then you can prove to the brand owner, okay, I made you this much money. I should take a cut of that. So it becomes really easy to give the brand owner like the perceived value that you actually provide.
Mhm.
Additionally, wait, can you just like follow up with the question? Yeah, ask that
Yeah.
question again. Sorry. Yeah, we can cut it out.
So, a lot of UGC creators nowadays, I feel like, still focus on kind of just social media content and aesthetic content, which is good. It's good to be able to have high quality, engaging content. But then another part of it is being able to have those skills and being able to convert for brands. But I think there's still a lot of gray area because a lot of creators don't really know how to do that. And not, I don't think a lot of people who have been in the space for a long time teach the concept of being able to focus on ads and conversion rather than just making like the aesthetic content. So, can you describe like the difference between organic content and ads and why it's important for a lot of UGC creators to focus on ads and try to learn those
Yeah,
concepts?
so organic content, usually there's not really an objective behind it besides let's get views, and if sales happens, that's good, but it's kind of washy feely. But for ads, it's really like, can we get $5 out or like $10 out for every $1 in?
Mm-hmm.
So you can really show the value that you're providing, right? In terms of the content itself, I would say for ads, there's a way to learn how to get people to buy, right? So then
Mm-hmm.
you can analyze different videos, see, okay, the first 3 seconds, high converting ads have this like split screen motion or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and then you go into retaining. How can you demonstrate the product, and then you can have a call to action. So there's like a very like
Mm-hmm.
structured approach for ads usually,
Mm-hmm.
but for organic content, I would say it's a little bit less structured. I would say in the beginning, if you want to get into user journey content, my suggestion is to focus on ads
Mm-hmm.
because you can really drive performance for that brand, improve your worth
Mm-hmm.
very easily because you can just point to the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Versus organic content, it's less likely that you can point to numbers. I'm
Right.
not saying that like one is good and one is bad. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
saying like maybe when you're starting out, focus on ads.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but of course, there are other brands out there that really crush it with organic content.
Mm-hmm.
So there are exceptions to the rules for everything.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. When I first started doing UGC, my first client, obviously like Max, you're very good at running ads, but not everyone is. My first client had never run ads before, and so it was a good point. And I didn't really know much. I basically knew nothing. Like that was my first month. I was even just doing it part time, and so it was like a gut health supplement. And my first client didn't know how to do ads, and so I tried to like just taught myself and tested different angles, different scripts. And so we went from like constipation angle and then bloating angle and just lots of different ways to make an ad. But that was able to get him sales, and so eventually I was able to negotiate and do more of like a profit share. And it's not like pay per video, it's like how depending on the amount of sales, I got like a chunk of that, how much profit
Yeah,
like they
and
got.
profit
Yeah.
shares, it it's a win-win situation, right? You're happy
Mhm.
because you're incentivized to make better content, and
Mhm.
it's transparent because you can see how much sales are being made, and the
Mhm.
business owner's happy because you're making sales, right?
Mhm.
Versus organic content, it's a little bit less transparent.
Right. And yeah, I mean, you might not be able to do it right away, like go up to someone and ask like for revenue or profit share, right? Like it might be more of a long-term relationship like with that business owner like after you've been able to show them value. Like would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, like let's
Yeah.
say you're beginning, right?
Mhm.
If you approached a brand owner that's bootstrapped, maybe you're making around 7 figures of revenue, and then you approach them with a video that you created about their product for their brand, saying, "Hey, I think this would make a good ad. Can you run it on Facebook?"
Mhm.
I mean, I would definitely say yes, just
Mhm.
because like, what's the risk in running that? If it doesn't make sales, and I probably spend $100, I mean, it's worth the shot, especially for
Mhm.
ads. But if it makes $10,000, then I'm definitely going to approach you again for another ad. So I think it's a really good way for content creators to get their foot in the door, and then once
Mhm.
you show those results, then you can put it on your portfolio, and then other brands who understand the value of performance marketing
Mhm.
will reach out to you too because they know that for every dollar they put in, they'll make $3 out with you.
Mhm. Right. Yeah, so when you like pitch different people, like as for UGC creators, that's like a good way. You could even just like include a video when you pitch them and, be able to stand out more in that case. But yeah, just moving on to another topic that's also very highly discussed. A lot of people charge for usage rights. And so for anyone who doesn't know what usage rights are, it's basically the brand can use your content for a certain amount of time. Sometimes it's a month, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, or sometimes it's like perpetual, just forever. And a lot of UGC creators charge for this and they put this outright on their portfolio. Um, I don't know, I've seen anywhere from like 30% of the package, from like it just depends on the month. I don't know, I've just seen a range of what people charge for. So, can I get your thoughts on like what you think if UGC creators should be charging for it and why or why not?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just talk about it from a brand owner
Mm,
perspective.
yeah.
Obviously, I understand that like you want to upsell the brand owners and make more money, so that's totally okay. But from a brand owner perspective, it makes zero sense for people to charge for usage rights. It's like I'm gonna get the content, and obviously I want to use that content.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I paying you for that content if not to use it? Like it's not
Mm-hmm.
gonna just sit on a Google Drive
Mm-hmm.
just for my enjoyment. Like so
Mm-hmm.
I'm obviously going to use it to pay, so why upcharge for that? I would say maybe you can upcharge for different things, right? So
Mm-hmm.
let's say they want to run it for ads, maybe you can charge a percentage of ad spend, which is very transparent. But of
Mm-hmm.
course, that's probably hard to do in the beginning, so you can just add a guarantee, or you can just charge per video, and then they'll approach you if the video works again, and then you can continue that relationship. I really think the ad spend model or the revenue based model, or maybe even the profit sharing model, is the best way forward for user generated content creators. Just because it aligns the incentives. It forces you to create good videos. It forces us to work with high converting content creators, and it just makes the industry better overall.
Yeah. And I know it's scary. Like, I don't, honestly don't think a lot of people do the revenue profit share, but it can definitely be beneficial, like, long term, rather than like a bunch of one offs. A lot of UGC creators struggle with having that like long term relationship and like a monthly retainer. I guess that's what they call it, and they just kind of get like a video for $100 or $200. But imagine if you can build that relationship over time. You might not get paid for it like straight away, but then if you're able to show value and all of that, then you can have like what you put in can be like 10x, like.
Yeah, and there's an advantage. It's like people don't realize that it can be a form of passive income, right? So let's say you make an ad that's performing well, and then I start putting money behind it, and then you negotiated an ad spend model. So for every $10 I put behind the ad, maybe you might take $1 out of it, right? And I run it for a whole year. So you just spent maybe an hour creating a video, and now you're getting passive income throughout that entire year. And that only happens if you create good ads. But with any like good skill, it takes time to create. So I think it's really worth investing in skills that will make you money over time, especially a skill that allows you to always eat, if that makes sense. So let's say like you want to launch your own brand. Now you know how to create ads. You want to help other brands. Now you know how to create ads. So it's a really helpful skill to learn.
Yeah, that makes sense. Honestly, I think UGC, like, you practice a lot of different skills, so you can definitely use that in the future. And it's kind of like that long-term mindset over, like, the short-term wins, and it can be a lot better versus just doing the short term.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and then I guess another point, aside from the usage rights, would you like suggest charging extra for hook variations? A lot of UGC creators charge extra for like different hooks. If you don't know exactly what that means, you can definitely look at different ads on Facebook and TikTok ads library. You can learn a lot from just analyzing ads and like looking at different formats. So a hook variation is just really a variation. Like, let's say one hook is this A, then it'll be like B or C. Like, it'll be different, different hooks. So would you charge extra for that? Or not you, but would you be okay with a UGC creator charging extra if you see that on their portfolio?
Yeah, I mean, I would understand if a content creator charges more for a hook, and the hook would just be the first 3 seconds of the video to capture the attention of the audience. So I would be willing to pay a little bit more. In terms of how much more, I wouldn't pay too much more just because like it's only like the first 3 seconds. Why would I pay so much more? Maybe you can even include it as part of your offer, like the 3 hooks, because it shows that you actually understand performance marketing and that you understand that for an ad to succeed, there needs to be multiple variations to give it the best shot of success. So how you craft your offer is important. Do you say, okay, I'll provide you an ad concept with 3 hooks for XYZ dollars, and then if it performs above a certain metric, let's say you put $10,000 behind it, then I'll get a percentage of that. Or you can say, I'll provide you all these videos and these hooks for free, and if it performs above the metric, then I'll start getting money. And then that would be interesting for the brand owner.
Yeah. And for anyone watching who's not super familiar just with like testing ads and media buying, could you just explain like a brief explanation of your process of what testing ads looks like? Because some people have never seen like, that side of things.
Yeah, so it's getting very easy on the Facebook ad side to run ads, right? So Facebook is putting all their money behind making it very easy for the brand owners to actually just run the ads. So on my case, I just take the video, I upload it onto Facebook, pretty easy process. I add maybe some ad copy that my copywriter could make or I could make, or if you provide it, that would even be better. That would show some understanding of the platform itself. And then I wait a couple days. I see if Facebook actually likes the ad. So if Facebook's algorithm determines if the ad is good based on, I guess, watch rate, hook rate. So basically how many people look at that ad for a period of time and how many people click through that ad. And then they allocate more spend towards it. And then if the ad performs well, more percentage of the spend will go behind it. And then the business will grow.
And how many ads do you usually test? Like, do you test like one, two, or like 100? I guess.
Yeah, so there are different strategies. I mean, I tend to test a lot of ads, maybe uh, like 3 to 5 a day. Some people focus on the quality side of it. They want to focus on, okay, let's make one good ad concept a week with some variations. It might be like a high production shot. So it just really depends on the brand owner.
Right. And this kind of goes into my next question, but you mentioned a lot of metrics and, like click rate, things like that. When let's say you see a creator's portfolio, a UGC creator, when you look at it, what is kind of something that will make it stand out? Like if you're just scrolling through it, like what do you think is essential to have in it and like what things will make it stand out? Whether it's like metrics or just specific videos or anything.
Are you talking about the metrics on the video itself or on the Facebook?
No, like let's say you're just looking at someone's portfolio,
Okay.
things that they mention that would make it stand out.
Yeah, so including the metrics that the ad performed. So like let's say you have a particular ad, you put an example there saying, and then I can look at the example, of course, and I can look at it, see if it performs, see if it looks good, and then you put specific metrics next to it like cost per click or cost per acquisition. I would say the cost per acquisition is more important. Like, hey, this ad drives like $1,000, 1,000 sales for $40 per sale. I'll be okay, that's interesting. And then I would look at the ad and then I would see, okay, this person understands performance marketing. Let me go after it. Of course, there's other metrics I would be interested in, like, is it profitable? Are we getting a good ROAS? A ROAS is a return on ad spend. So for every $1 in, are we getting $5 out? But it really depends on the product. So just to summarize, a cost per click, a cost per acquisition, and maybe the hook rate. So how many people actually stay on that video. Now, it could be hard to negotiate. It could be hard to convince brand owners to give you that information. But I would say if you're making ads for them, you definitely need to have that information or else you can't improve your content over time. It's like making organic content but not knowing how many views it gets.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so if you are making ads or considering making ads for someone, like definitely look into those metrics and include like the important numbers, right? Because I know you were looking at my portfolio the other day and you were trying to like make it stand out with like this video got this amount, like CTR. And I feel like it's also like you just learn over time, as you test more ads, like what is important.
Just to clarify, so cost per acquisition and cost per click vary per industry. So putting a benchmark could be useful or putting a comparison. So let's say the ad account that you're running for the ads typically gets a $50 cost per acquisition, and then you're able to reduce it by 50% with your ad. I mean, that would be compelling. So always having that comparison would be useful to help you stand out because numbers in a vacuum don't mean anything, but numbers when compared to something else is very interesting.
And yeah, another question I had is, how do you see like the future of UGC evolving? Like I know it's growing a lot right now. Do you think it'll continue to grow, or do you think entrepreneurs and other business owners will still use UGC within the next year, 5 years?
Yeah, I think user-generated content will always be around unless AI does something about it, right? But in terms of I think user-generated content will start becoming a little bit more unequal, if that makes sense. So people who really understand Facebook ads, performance marketing will make more of that money, right? And then there's going to be another side where it's just gifted content. Like it's just gifted products. So you'll have these platforms that aggregate content creators, and then brands will send the product over, and then they might get $10-$20 and then make content, and then the brand owner will just use it to just stitch together multiple different content creators to make an ad. So if you really want to make, I think, a lot of money in this industry, going towards more so the agency side of charging ad spend, really understanding direct response marketing, performance marketing, so that you can stand out against the rest.
And I know you've like run a lot of ads since you started. What are there any tools or books that you like that come to mind, or even courses that creators, I think a lot of people in the audience also just like business and want to get into it in general. So do you have any tools or books or anything that you can think of?
Yeah, in terms of marketing, I would recommend Eugene Schwartz. So that will really give you an understanding of the fundamentals of marketing. But if you want to go into business, maybe you're thinking, is business right for me? There's this book called The Millionaire Fastlane. It's kind of a cheesy title, but I really think it encapsulates why business is important if your specific goal is to get financial freedom, or to maybe enjoy life to the fullest, right? So it talks about how, you know, like you're trading 5 days of indentured servitude for 2 days of freedom. So that's like the 9 to 5. And then it talks about how like just saving your money in an index fund is not necessarily the best way because you don't take into account inflation, right? So let's say you might be making 10% on an index fund. Well, how about if inflation is 5%, right? So, and then now you have to wait 40 years to make lots of money, but then at that point you're old and then you can't really enjoy that money, right? So, he really drills into the mindset of that so that you can actually go into business with full commitment. And I think it's important to get that mindset correct, or else you might drop out early from the business before it succeeds. And I would really try to figure out why you want to go into business. Is it for financial freedom? Is it to support your family? And always remember that when things get hard.
Nice. And this is just another question I thought of, but I know in the past businesses we've worked with and also the brand now, you're really big on learning. Like that's like a big thing, especially like for the values and, even encouraging your employees to continuously learn, and you even give like courses and everything. Why, like, have you always been big on learning, and like is that something you're going to keep just doing and encouraging others to do?
Yeah, so I think in business, things move very, very fast. So, one day we didn't have ChatGPT, and the next day, a million people joined, and it just completely changed the industry, right? So if you're a copywriter, and a copywriter is somebody who makes words that sell, if you are a copywriter during that time and you didn't adapt, you used the tools, and you said, oh, I don't have to learn this, I'll just focus on my own thing, then you're going to be left behind. So having a growth mindset is really important for business in general because, if your competitors are doing it and you're not doing it, it's just going to be much, much harder for you.
Yeah. And that's a really good point because AI is honestly, like ChatGPT, I use it a ton. I use it for my pitches. I actually just counted yesterday, but I sent 100 emails in my first week of UGC manually, but I was able to do that. And now there's all those platforms like Movig and Rodeo, and I'm sure if you're a UGC creator, you're familiar with that. But now that makes it so much easier. Like it just sends 50, 100 emails a week. But I was doing that manually. But even then, ChatGPT, it learns over time. A lot of people are kind of mad about it or only use it once or twice, especially for content creators, because they say it doesn't sound like them or, it just doesn't get it right. But over time, it really learns and it can give you like what you want if you ask it the right questions. And yeah, so I really suggest that for pitching, for content ideas. Yeah, it really just helps for a lot of different areas.
Yeah, and I would say to really embrace these tools because you don't want to be a modern day Luddite. So like, Luddites, how they would, in the past, they would destroy technology because they felt like it was taking their job or whatever. That is valid. I mean, I understand that jobs will be lost, but why does it have to be your job that's lost, right? You can always adapt. And I think it's really all about taking control of the situation, even though it might seem hopeless. And you might be right that the situation is out of your control. But I think believing that it's out of your control serves no purpose for you. The only way that you can actually have a chance to succeed is believing that you need to take ownership over, your work and really use these tools to your advantage, even if it might be, harmful in the beginning.
And just this is like my one last longer question, but for anyone who wants to start, someone DM'd me the other day. I think they were still in high school, 16 or 17. Do you think it's possible for them to start this content creation or business earlier on, rather than like, I know you were in college, right? So when you started, but you were already doing things beforehand. But what, can they do it? And like, what do you suggest?
Yeah, so I launched my business when I was 19 and I think I made my first $1 million in profit when I was 20. I don't exactly remember the number, but what I'm trying to say is that I know people that are like 16 years old that are making, I think, more than me at this point. So
Wow.
it's not, I don't think age matters too much. In
Mhm.
fact, like if you're young, then you actually have an advantage because you were born into the social media, like
Mhm.
the community. You
Mhm.
understand it probably better than older people. So you have an
Mhm.
advantage there. And you also have the advantage of time, right?
Mhm.
So like, people who get older on the scale, they have less time to dedicate towards learning specific skills. But when you're young, I mean, that's all you might have school, and then you can just focus full time
Mhm.
on, work and trying to learn these skills.
Mhm.
So I think there are certain advantages that being young have that you might have that people
Mhm.
don't realize, so that you should try to make the most of it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, so it's definitely possible, especially for content creation, you really don't need that much to get started. Just like a phone and like a willing, like determination and like being willing to learn. And on the flip side of that, I know there's a few like moms who I've helped coach and just some older people on that like flip side of the coin. I still think it's very much possible. There's a lot of brands out there looking for people who are, maybe not in their teens, but in their 30s, 40s, even 50s. I see casting calls all the time for that. So if you just kind of are realizing that now that you want to get started, it's still very
Oh
possible.
yeah, if you're on the older side, I mean,
Hmm.
think about who has the money in society. It's not like 18-year-olds, right? So it's like
Hmm.
people who have had jobs, right?
Hmm.
And then maybe they're even retiring, right? And then they
Hmm.
want to buy stuff. And if
Hmm.
you look like these people, right, then you're more
Hmm.
likely to get the purchase, at least from the ad side, right? So like for ads, if the person speaking looks like the persona that we're targeting, then it tends to get more sales, right? So
Hmm.
so if you're on the older side, you can even charge more because it's more of a scarce commodity, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Yeah, and especially if you are a male watching this, there's a lot of brands looking, there's a lot of girl UGC creators, like female UGC creators, and I think there's a really big lack of male ones. And whenever I see casting calls, basically like a brand owner might post, like, I'm looking for this, I'm in this women of influencer marketing Slack group, and there's casting calls all the time, and there's usually only like one or two comments for the male creators. And so I think if you're a male and really want to get into it, there's a big like opportunity for you there.
Yeah, because there's a lot of male focused brands, but there's not a lot of male focused content creators.
Hmm.
So now you can just charge even more because there's less supply.
Hmm. Yeah, and I guess this is my actual last question. There's just like a few rapid fire questions. But what is next for you? I mean, you recently sold your
Mm.
business. Like, was it, when did you sell your business? Was it
Oh,
2022?
like a year ago, around a year ago.
Yeah, 2022. And yeah, so I guess what is next?
Yeah, so we identified a problem within the skincare space. My aha moment was when I started going into my health journey and I ended up losing 50 pounds, and I figured out that a lot of what the world is saying is actually false or a lie, right? So there are things like meat is bad. I think there's evidence to support that meat is actually very beneficial for humans. It has lots of nutrients that you can't find in plants, like carnosine and creatine. And figuring this out, I was like, wow, like are there other things on the market that we've been lied to? And I think another thing of that is actually sunscreen. So a lot of
Mm-hmm.
sunscreen is very harmful to your body. It contains chemicals like avobenzone that can um, serve as hormone disruptors.
Mm-hmm.
But sunscreen is actually really beneficial for humans because you want to avoid the UV rays. So how can you develop a product that doesn't harm your body through the toxic chemicals, but still protect you from those UV rays from the sun? So I tried looking for other solutions on the
Mm-hmm.
market, and there really weren't any.
Mm-hmm.
There are even people like talking like Carnivore MD, which you
Mm-hmm.
might know about, where he talks about how there's lots of toxic sunscreens out there and it's hard to find a good alternative.
Mm-hmm.
Since I tried searching, I wanted to make my own. So after lots of testing, I actually landed on a tallow-based sunscreen. So tallow is really a really beneficial, substance for humans to use. It's beef fat,
Mm-hmm.
but it's actually very similar to the composition of our skin. So
Right.
sebum, which is oil on the skin,
Mm-hmm.
is actually Latin for tallow. So tallow and sebum are actually very
Like
like
similar.
synonymous to each
Yeah.
other. So we've been using tallow for centuries, and I think that this tallow will actually cure lots of skin conditions. You know, if you have eczema, psoriasis, it can actually, fix that because it's very similar to the contents of your skin. It's very spreadable. It can reduce the white cast. It's so safe that you can theoretically eat it. And we are one of the first, sunscreens on the market that's solving this problem.
Yeah, I've tried it myself and I've honestly been using it for the past 2 months now. And at first I was skeptical because, I actually don't use a ton of skincare products. I use sunscreen daily and I use moisturizer daily, but now that I found out the toxic chemicals that were in that moisturizer and sunscreen, I have now stopped using it. And so I've been using Sky and Soul, which is what the company's called, and I've been using that daily and it honestly really does work. My skin feels really moisturized when I put it on. And I recently had this photo shoot, and that's what I wore as like the base. And I put it on it worked as a primer, and it stayed on like the whole day. Like I started, I think at 8 or 9 a.m., and when I got home, it was still on. And so it's really good for any girls out there, but also for anyone, obviously sunscreen is really important and I think we don't really think about it too much, but especially if you're outside a lot doing a lot of outdoor activities, or even if you're just inside, like the sun's rays are still penetrating and kind of, you need to be able to protect yourself for the future. And I know people use sunscreen for a lot of different reasons. I think I put out a poll the other day and it's like to decrease like the decrease the chance of getting skin cancer. Some people just, they don't want to get sunburned. And a lot of solutions in the past didn't work for people, which is why I think a lot of people are trying Sky and Soul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've definitely looked at other products on the market, and when I was hiking Mount Kilimanjaro, I wanted to look for a natural sunscreen because all the sunscreens out there are toxic. Avobenzone and homosalate, just you don't want that anywhere near your skin. It can decrease testosterone by I think over 38%. That's what the studies showed. So you don't want that. And then this natural sunscreen I found has seed oils, which you also don't want that on your skin because it can lead to damage. So there was really nothing else on the market, and I realized that maybe tallow is actually the solution for it because number one, it replaces seed oils. You don't need that. Number two, it's very spreadable. You can spread it on the skin very easily. And number three, it's very moisturizing, and I think that it can cure a lot of skin conditions. So it's really the best ingredient that you could ever have in a sunscreen.
And I know before, I tend to look at a lot of labels for my food and snacks, but I didn't really look at my like skincare product labels. So definitely check yours and see what's on the back of it. You might be surprised like at what you would find. I know there's like that new app called Yuka too that kind of rates all these sunscreens. So definitely check that out.
Yeah, say that I think the statistic is your skin absorbs 68% of the chemicals that you put on it. Right? So it's like your skin is basically a mouth, so you should only put ingredients that you would be safe or fine with eating. I mean that's really our like driving force here because I think a lot of people are realizing that what you put on your skin is going to affect your body, and if it affects your body, it's going to affect your mood, it's going to affect your entire life. So it's really worth being conscious about your health in that regard.
And even if you might not see the consequences right now, definitely just think about the long-term effects. Like I know you might not notice it like every day, like if like these harmful chemicals are getting into your skin, but long-term, I definitely care about like what will happen to me 10, 20, 30 years down the line.
Yeah. Find us at skyandsoul.co, or you can just look us up on Instagram or
It's the
Facebook.
same, yeah, Sky and Soul Co. So
Yeah.
yeah, check us out on there.
So click the link below.
It's very new, so it's just when we launch it.
It was launched in July of
Yeah.
2023.
But a lot of people have already, tried it out, right? And like are buying it.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we've gotten no refund requests so far for product quality
Yeah.
because people are really enjoying it.
So yeah, check it out and follow us on there.
Yeah.
Here's just a few rapid fire questions. You could answer them in a few sentences, or if you just want one sentence, but we have time. So if you weren't an entrepreneur, is there any other occupation you would have or a dream job you had as a little kid?
Probably a scientist. So I really enjoy making products. I really enjoy coming up with solutions. So I've actually worked at a lab before in the past. So
Nice. And is there anything that you wish you did more?
no. No, I feel like as an entrepreneur, you can craft your life the
Mm-hmm.
way you want it. Of course, there are sacrifices. Like, we work a lot. Maybe you can work 12 hours a day, 8 hours a day, but with that sacrifice, you get some benefits from it. So
Mm-hmm.
I think on a
Mm-hmm.
good path.
And I know this, I just thought of this when you mentioned work, but you work a lot. I mean, I work a lot too, but what are your thoughts on work-life balance?
I think if you enjoy work, I mean, just do it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if work is meaningful for you, I feel like you can break down the word work to many different components, right? Let's say
Mm-hmm.
you're really passionate about designing products that help people.
Mm-hmm.
Some people might perceive that as work and then have a negative connotation. You might
Mm-hmm.
perceive it as pursuing what you are meant to do in this world. So like
Mm-hmm.
why like I just think that you just have to relabel that word or become more detailed with what you're trying to get at.
And another question I had. Oh, I have two more questions and then yeah, that's it from my end. But you've launched a lot of products. So to give some background, Max has been. Were you in dropshipping before, like before starting, right? And I know a lot of people kind of start out like that way. And how many products did you try to launch
Maybe around
before?
20 before hitting my big win.
And what is one product you launched that didn't work out?
Yeah, so I tried launching a gaming brand. So we had
Mm,
lots of different mouses, laptops. No, no, not
mm,
laptops, sorry, keyboards,
mm,
um, like headphones, and it
mm,
was break even. So, but I just eventually closed it down because I felt like the products weren't proprietary or unique in any way.
mm. Gotcha. Yeah, if you could only have one social media app or website, I know you don't even use it that much, but what would it be?
YouTube, because there's lots of information on there. You can learn pretty much anything.
Nice. Oh, well, thank you for watching, everyone. Thanks, Max, for coming to speak with me here today. And yeah, this is really my first video interview, as you can tell if you go to my channel, but hoping to do some more. And I'll probably be filming a video on, how to be a UGC creator in 2023. I haven't done anything like that, so I'll be going more in depth in terms of UGC and different aspects of it in that video. But yeah, thank you for watching.
Thank you.